Brought to you by the Rugby Outlet Mall, equipping you for freedom and connection through rugby. Find out more at rugbyoutletmall.com.
I think the minute I stepped on a practice field for rugby, the calling happened.
An 8-year plan to be on the team, and I was in it within 2 years.
Don't wait until you are a pro to be a pro, right?
Like, I like doing something, stopping and learning from it.
Like, it just looked like it was a heavy hit.
To give up, it's not up.
You know, that's the first time I played like professionally.
I'm making rugby money. How can I make money outside of it?
And there was two Scottish guys, and they said, "Oh, you're here for the movie."
Rugby is a sport where that's often coupled with actually having a good time.
He looked at me and he says, "You guys are off."
Grow rugby, 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 grow rugby.
Hey, what's really good, you guys? Welcome to another great episode of Grow Rugby. My name is GiftTime Ebelu, and this is the podcast where we talk with people about the opportunities they found or received through rugby. And we have a great guest for you today, Gordon Hanlon, coach with American Rugby Pro Training Center, with Dallas Harlequins. Just a guy who has been in this coaching realm, making his way through over the course of these last few years. And you guys are going to really want to take a listen to this. When you talk about a philosophy in coaching, a philosophy in how to move forward when things are slowly building, this is the opportunity to listen to that. Like, this was such a great interview. I got to give him credit, man. Like, this guy's been everywhere. So you guys are going to really like this. Sit still, check it out. Just want to mention a few things. One, have you guys been watching the World Rugby 10s? Like, watching this past weekend? Apparently we got 2 more weekends of this. And I got to say, it was entertaining. Now, for somebody who's had the opportunity of playing in Asia, like, Rugby 10s is such a common thing because the tournaments that we would typically go to were Rugby 10 tournaments. So to be able to see it and, you know, see it in a additionally competitive way, just seeing it over here in the States, or at least on this part of the hemisphere, it's nice. It's great to be able to see because it's like that healthy mix between 7s and 15s, obviously. Like, you get enough forward play, but it is still a very fast-paced game because you still have more backs than you're going to have forwards. But it was really good to watch the little bit that I had a chance to, and you know, kudos to it being on ESPN Plus. It's always nice to have that extra bit of branding along with it because, you know, it put some sauce on it, you know, a little bit of sauce on that. And then, of course, the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, but, you know, I just wanted to mention now, just because of my own heritage, you know, Nigeria's been going through a lot right now, going with SARS. And if you guys don't know what SARS is actually the special anti-robbery unit that is in existence in Nigeria. Basically, it's police brutality and corruption occurring all over again, just in another country. Something that, you know, can have its own issues, but essentially a lot of the people in this program have been abusing their power. And you have this situation where it has not only cost people families, but it's cost lives. And all of it is just based off of probable cause with no evidence. You just need to be accused, basically. So it is something that is serious, and, you know, I have to always consider my people. And of course, you know, I've been a big advocate of Nigeria National Rugby Club, and of course they're right there in Lagos, Nigeria, where a lot of the protests and, you know, ultimate shootings of the police on protesters has been going on. So just keep that into consideration. You know, whenever you see end SARS, it's not the disease, it is with Nigeria. And when I tell you that this connects all of us, this is part of the greater intertwinedness of 2020. I mean it. Like, this hits all the points that we've been wanting to hit, even here in the States. And, you know, what we saw even with the upspring of the Black Lives Matter movement from this summer, as even though it's kind of felt like it died down a little bit, but this is still part of that element. And, you know, and mainly the issue of police brutality, and wanted to make sure we have accountability. A proper society has accountability, even within its law and order, and we want to keep going bigger than that. So just keep it in mind, and I hope you guys understand what's been going on there. In the meantime, we have, like I said, it's a great show. This has been a great week. It's interesting to see how a little bit of rugby is coming back here and there. Actually, this past week, I think it was last week, Thursday, we had Rugby ATL taking on New Orleans Academy as well. Correction, not Rugby ATL, 404, the developmental squad of Rugby ATL taking on New Orleans Developmental Academy. So it is good to see rugby come back, even if I'm a little cautious considering all the COVID stuff that's still starting to increase again. And, add that with the election season, so everything gets a little bit more confusing, but such is life, right? But in the meantime, we still have a great sponsor for us today, Rugby Outlet Mall. Definitely come check it out. I've seen a lot of people add Rugby Outlet Mall onto their Facebook page and then the Instagram page. Definitely appreciate that. Definitely check out, and even if you're doing it as just a mere support, I'm telling you, go ahead, get an HBCU Rugby Classic jersey, rock it out, rock it for the HBCUs. We got a little something coming up for next week. And with that announcement, and I get ready, I'm excited to be able to have that going on. And even if you don't get an HBCU Rugby shirt, get yourself a Ballers Play Rugby t-shirt, man. Let the people know what it is. Like, you a baller, all right? Not just a baller, you're a baller. All right, so come get this stuff, man. Yeah, like it's good stuff. It's good wear. Support the cause. It helps us a lot. And of course, we want to be able to also show our appreciation in any way we can. And with that, because you're listening to this, definitely use the promo code GROW Rugby, GREAUX Rugby, for 20% off of GiftTime Rugby, HBCU Rugby Classic items. And you guys will definitely be able to get the most out of it. It, like I said, it allows us to know how, it allows us to see what you guys are up to, and of course, we definitely always appreciate it every single time. Also, check out our documentary, Singapore to Tokyo, Any Way We Can. Jason Bray and myself traveled from Singapore through Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, all the way to Japan for the Rugby World Cup 2019, getting to meet these rugby NGOs along the way. And when I tell you, this is heartwarming. This is a heartwarming tale of just resilience. It's understanding the culture of rugby even deeper than you could ever imagine, and seeing how far spread rugby really does impact. And it's amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And you guys can actually go check that out at redearthfilms.vhx.tv. That is redearthfilms.vhx.tv. It is only $17. And unlike what you would get for Netflix, you can actually keep the video and use it any way that you want. Show it to your friends, pass it, whatever. But, you guys definitely don't want to miss this one. It's good. It's so good. It's so heartwarming. 7 episodes, 20 minutes apiece. You don't even have to watch it in one shot, but you probably won't even be able to put it down. I'm telling you, you guys are going to enjoy the heck out of this one. And lastly, before I get you guys into the podcast, don't forget to like Grow Rugby Podcast on Instagram, and subscribe to GiftTime Rugby Network on YouTube so that you guys can catch new updates of whenever we drop our episodes, information on the people we talk about, and of course, getting to see the video of the actual conversations, plus other things that we have getting ready to post out for this next month and a half. So you guys are going to really enjoy it. Definitely check it out. And in the meantime, don't forget to actually comment and like on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. In the meantime, check out Gordon Hanlon, Dallas, Texas Rugby Union head coach. Also, one last thing. You know, the program that we talk about actually would be happening on the Monday previous to this coming out. So look for the replays of it because you're going to want to get into the coaching. Check it out. Gordon Hanlon, Texas Rugby Union, head coach.
Grow Rugby, 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 Grow Rugby.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of Grow Rugby. I got another VIP guest with us today, Gordon Hanlon. Now, I don't know if you guys know, but this guy is coaching prodigy happening right over here. Like, this man has coached around the U.S., at home in Scotland, right? No, Ireland, you know. Sorry, I know sensitivities on that, but he's been working hard with American Rugby Pro Training Center, and now working hard with the Texas Rugby Union, working on developing coaches and getting them better. Gordon, man, thanks for coming through.
Yeah, no worries. I'm excited. You know, we've talked for many a year.
Right.
So, yeah. So it's actually good to get our inane ramblings down recorded.
Right. You know, we move to the vocal element of this.
Yes, for sure.
Man, but you know, it's been a great just journey, and I know we've watched our journeys over. It's been like what 4 or 5 years now, and just being able to see where we've been able to go in this rugby industry, especially the up and down nature that it's been these last few years, was just how rugby, whether it's just the growth, Olympics, and everything we're hoping to come from it, or whether it's been with this now bankruptcy and everything that comes along with it. But it's been good to be able to see for you, especially just seeing how much coaching knowledge that you've just been accruing and giving and accruing and giving. And I definitely know you. Like I talked with Kelly Smith, obviously, person that you've worked with personally, you know, hands-on, and just seeing how much the development and how much she allowed your work as well. So it's good to be able to finally, you know, like I said, talk about it vocally. But kind of, I always love getting to the start of it. Dude, you know, how'd you get started with rugby, man?
So I basically, when I was 8, I moved to a new school in Ireland, and everyone had to play rugby. It was it's one of those rugby schools which are producing talent now, but at the age of 8, you had to do at least one full season of rugby, and then you could make a decision the next year.
Yeah.
And it was okay. I liked it, you know. I started eating my way towards being a prop. And there's not many other sports you can play when you're eating your way to being a prop. So that was it. That was rugby, and I did it.
Man, look, you know, I multiple layers on this one. One part of it, the fact of having to play rugby, like because I would have thought most of the schools in Ireland would have at least given the multiple sports of either a Gaelic football, rugby, and or, you know, maybe not soccer, football so much, but even soccer, basketball, something within that realm, or netball, something to that effect.
Yeah, so there's a large divergence in how the schools are in Ireland. So the majority of them will have, like, if you're in the countryside or in the rural areas, it is one of the 2 Gaelic sports that would be the predominant sport that you'd play. Other ones have soccer as well. But the majority, like soccer, is generally a club sport as opposed to the school sport. Schools will do it, but it's, you know, people will go to their clubs.
Right.
And then I went to a rugby playing school. So that's what its main focus was on. In the, like, when you got towards the, like, the high school part of the program, then they did offer, you know, basketball, swimming, the judo. And then they had all the track and field sports, and they did have a soccer team. No Gaelic team, but they had soccer and basketball available.
No, I can feel that. So, like, you move into you being a prop, and I mean, obviously you're not prop size now. So, like, was it one of those situations where you were just like they worked you down, eating up to the prop, and then you ended up like playing yourself out of prop, or You know,
No,
what was
it's
it that continuation?
I was basically a fat kid. So I used to swim at a decent level for Ireland, not for Ireland, but at junior levels and stuff. So I was swimming like 6 days a week, and I was doing morning sessions and consuming so many calories. And then because I had to do rugby, and the school I went to was 45 minutes away, I couldn't make the swim practices. So then I stopped swimming, but I kept consuming the same amount of calories. So that trend kind of continued till I was like 15, I think. 15,
Yeah.
16. I weighed about little under 240. And then I got sick one summer, and I was working all summer in a restaurant in the kitchen, and dropped like 80 pounds in 2.5 months.
Oh, damn.
So the weight, I kind of like my puppy weight just fell off me, And as a child, I was like enamored by my grandfather, who was a farmer, and he would always be out, like I'd be cutting down trees on the weekend and spending the summers just working with him. So I got kind of like farmer strong as well.
That country boy strong.
Yeah. It's a real thing. Like it is a real thing, So yeah, I got bigger, and then I got very smaller, very small quite quickly.
Not being able to consume the amount of calories you're going, and then your body fighting against you. It's a nice diet plan right there.
Yeah. So that was good. It was. I didn't have I went to Belvedere College. So Keane Healy, the current Irish prop, was in the year below me.
Oh, nice.
I never had his work ethic or anything. He'd always, from the age of 14, 15, I remember seeing him with the protein shakes, and at lunchtime he'd be in the gym, he'd get in a couple of sets in, he'd be working out in the mornings, and then he'd be working out after, and he'd have all the practices. And I just never had that work ethic, to be honest. Very few do at that age, and the ones that do tend to go quite far, especially as players.
So was because of that, like you had this appreciation for it. Obviously, there was already a cultural element that goes into it. But what was it that ended up? Were these kind of the early stages that got you interested in moving from the player side to the coaching side, or was that a different journey altogether?
It was completely different, actually. When I moved to the US for the first time in 2009. I found a local club here in Dallas, and on my very first practice session, I went to tackle a prop, and I grabbed him by the shirt collar, and I torqued my hand, and then ended up having 2 broken bones in my hand. I had 2 torque breaks, so I couldn't really do much. So, because I was a funny talker with an accent, turns out I could coach. Little did they know, but yeah, and that's how I kind of helped out and did a little bit there, and I struggled. I struggled emotionally and mentally, like with things being thrust upon me at such a young age then. And it wasn't until I lived in Colombia, down in Bogota, in 2011, and then I started helping out there, and I kind of got a lot more into my coaching, and I found it much more of a viable outlet, because to be honest, playing in Colombia was a struggle, especially for me as a expat. I was always getting eye gouged and punched, and they were just mean to me.
Because look, you got to get the advantage. Like, how dare you enter into our country like this? You were gonna get our vengeance.
Yeah, they were very mean, and that's all I remember. So I started coaching, and then I kind of it was because rugby was a lot less developed than here. So what I was able to do is I was able to explore new ideas, and they said, "Oh yeah, let's try it. This idea could work. Let's try that." So I had like a new attack shapes and new kind of like tack sequences, which weren't common at the time, and some of them worked, some of them didn't. But it kind of got me thinking about coaching a lot more. And then just kind of I got lucky, and we won a title or 2.
Nice.
And then I got to do some regional stuff there, and it's kind of just always experimenting, and I enjoyed it. It helped me. I had to work on my Spanish a lot, which is also another reason why I wanted to do it. To be able to communicate in several languages, I think is a unique skill, which is probably not as appreciated as it could be, certainly here in the US.
Well, I mean, the US, just. But no, I like I like what you have happening, and it kind of brings up several layers that I always love bringing when it comes to rugby. Obviously, travel being one of the foremost ones, but I think the other interesting part is what we always know as differencing levels between countries that have it rugby culturally within it versus a country that doesn't. Even coming to the US first, the mere fact that you were able to not only have that responsibility thrust, but there was an actual credibility and an actual showing of different levels of expectation of being able to show the game through your coaching at that time, whether you believed it or not. But clearly there was a club that it was like, he clearly knows something that we don't.
Yeah. Well, I may have oversold myself. I was only helping out. There was coaches there at the time, but it was more kind of just like, what do you think? Have you any ideas on this? And it just kind of got me thinking about it more so than actually. I wasn't doing the detailed coaching plans that I have right now.
But I still stand by what I said. There was still an expectation. There was still, I'm gonna let you might undersell yourself. I'm gonna sell you exactly. But no, it's still an expectation that there is something that and from your perspective, when you came in 2009, because be honest, like it almost feels like a world's difference, because that was even when I started playing and seeing the rugby then versus what it is now. While I don't think it's not yards and miles different, but I do feel like there's been a significant increase in some areas of rugby play here in the States and even just in the Americas itself. So, but for you coming in, like when you started playing in Dallas, like did you feel like, was there anything that you noticed different than what it would be for Ireland?
Like the distance for games was a big part.
Yeah.
Who
doesn't like going 6 hours out of the way, 8 hours to your game?
Yeah. It is funny. So after I remember playing an away game in Ireland, and so it was with the Skerries club there, and we all met at the clubhouse to carpool because the away game was 45 minutes away. Because that was a long drive. And it's like if you can't even drive from Fort Worth to Plano in 45 minutes.
I would genuinely fight somebody who said, "Man, this is going to be a 45-minute drive. This is going to take forever." Like I'm like, wait, this is a blink.
Yeah. So I didn't I played under 20s rugby and then I had some concussions and so I never played senior rugby in Ireland. I had to take 2 years off to get out of the game. I noticed in 2009, I think, now perhaps I'm just looking back with rose-tinted glasses, but I know in Dallas anyway, I think the performance levels were a little bit higher. That's when the Super League was in place. So
that was like the ending parts of the Super League at that point.
I think the peak of the mountain was a little bit higher, but it wasn't quite as a broad game. Like the overall standard wasn't quite as high. There weren't as many teams playing high performance rugby,
right,
compared to now. I noticed it being quite physical because the grounds and the turf is so hard.
Right.
I still have a scar on my leg from sliding on the ground and it tearing my skin off.
A few remember me's.
Yeah, and people were just like, I always I talk to all teams, the difference between banter and just being an asshole. Like you couldn't make jokes, people get offended. It's like, okay. The amount of times I was threatened to be punched as well. It's okay, then punch me. It's okay.
This is part of the process.
Yeah, Yeah. So
it was Irish. So Irish.
Okay, it's kind of what happens sometimes. So that was, I didn't really take, even in that year, in 2009, 2010 season, the 2 seasons, I didn't really take it too seriously. I was like, was a young Irish guy who moved from kind of like Irish countryside to Dallas, Texas, and worked at a incredible place and was very fortunate and kind of enjoyed myself quite a lot.
Nice.
Rugby was kind of on the back burner then. It was an activity and it was a friendship group, but
Right.
it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was. Maybe it'd make the top 5 in my priorities at the time.
That's what's up. Hey, look, to be honest with you, top 5 is not bad. It's top 5 if you're even considering. But no, I can understand exactly what you mean on that. So then in that situation, and you started getting the ideas of being able to do coaching at that point, which leads you down to Bogota, Colombia. And as you noted, like that you already had, there was a little bit less development, but of the rugby there. But for you, did you feel like it was something that was a better training ground for you to kind of develop your skills because you had a little bit more room to be able to work off of, even though it's less experienced, less skilled players, but now you get to maybe take more risks?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, it was like I brought in. I do remember this. I got the Bogota regional side, the under-18s team, and it was made up from so many different players. They weren't all kind of like centrally located or at the same club.
Yeah.
So I came up with the idea to have this like numbered attack system whereby we have, I think it was 18 different attacks, be it from like a pick and go to the left or a pick and go to the right or a pass here and there, and we just numbered them all off. And the idea was the number 10 would just call a 3-number sequence and we knew our next 3 plays.
Oh, nice.
And it's like we need. To this day I don't know how I thought of it or why, but I mean, we never actually got to play any games because there was terrible weather and the season got cancelled, and then I ended up leaving. But it was an interesting dynamic to explore, and it actually got them thinking further ahead. So people, your decision makers had to think like 3 phases ahead.
Right. Which is something that we always try and we credit higher level rugby, particularly like the All Blacks, even Ireland, England, and at times, like whenever it's playing the game, it feels like a chess match, not of what's happening within the plays, but what's happening 5 plays ahead, and the setup and presentation for that.
Yeah, and we can, if you want to, like, I mean, that's such a true comment. I mean, we're probably going to bounce and jump around, but I remember I was in a room with one of the All Blacks number 9s. He was talking to a Scottish number 9, and they were talking about their exit strategies. And the All Blacks had a scrum on the right-hand side, and then they would attack wide left instead of exiting. And what that did is it pulled the Scottish fullback in, pulled the winger across, and the 9 was out of position, and then they would kick. And the Scott was saying, "Hey, did you do this on purpose?" And he's like, "Yeah, all the time, because we knew you guys would bite in, and then you wouldn't cover in behind. So we knew that if you could win our scrum or win our line out, make 3 passes, then we had an entire open field to kick into and to try and exit from." So they were thinking that was just 1 or 2 phases ahead, but it happens all the time. It's proactive instead of reactive.
And that's one of those things. And in the early stages, and I remember starting to get to understand this, and really it's been maybe the last 3 years that I came to understand it a lot more, was getting past that first, second phase of looking at it, because there's a lot of times where you just kind of watch a game and it feels like it is reactive, constantly reactive. But whenever but every time people would always tell me, no, people are looking at it so far down the line. And I would always keep wondering, I'm like, okay, what exactly would you be setting up, like up to a certain point? Because you're just one line out, you're just one player from stepping it out of position to kind of ruin what you think the sequence is. But I guess whenever you are maintained within a certain rule, a certain limitation of the rules, or you're working within your scheme so well that it does become inherently more predictive as a result, right?
Yeah, and that was one of the things, the criticism that came upon Joe Schmidt at the end of his Irish tenure. Like, he'd have anywhere from 3 to 8 phases mapped out in a sequence. So then everyone knew their positions for, let's say, 8 phases in a row, and it's kind of like you do your job. So they said that the Irish team kind of lost a little bit of the creativity and the spark. Like, people weren't allowed or given the permission to I use the term razzle dazzle because it's just so ridiculous. But they weren't given the opportunities to just, go have a crack or do something out of the sequence, because Joe Schmidt was such a tactical genius that he was moving all these people around. He said, okay, after 7 phases, the gap will be here. That's what we do.
So it kind of took away the artistry out of it and just made it pure science.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. If you ever met any French rugby players, they all talk about French flair back in the 80s. And I doubt there was very much practice going on there. They just kind of showed up and you go, do what you want. And you'll be there.
Just be in position. Just be there when you need to be.
Just do what you want. It's okay. Boom.
No, that makes all the sense. I love it. So I guess you come out of Columbia, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've now had a full experience of coaching. Columbia was your first truly full experience coaching, not just as an assistant, but full experience. So you're coming out of that, and I guess you're returning back to the States. Yeah. So what was it that you had going from there? What was it that you were thinking from there of whether to advance this or whether or not this was?
So I came back and I wanted to stay, and then the Harlequins, the Dallas Harlequins, were very kind, and probably they helped me get the sports visa, so I could be here. And I didn't do any coaching, but I got to train again half-heartedly under Michael Engelbrecht, who works with Salty Thompson at that era thing, and he was also with the US All-Americans, and it was my first experience of true top quality coaching. And I just remember just being fascinated and enamored by basically I hung on every single word, and I was interested about the cadence and how he spoke, and just the drills, and then the fluidity of how the sessions would go. So that was probably the year I learned the most about coaching up until 2015, without actually coaching. It was just learning off him was a great experience. It really was. But I didn't take my rugby too seriously either.
I feel like there's a theme of resonating.
It changes.
No, but it's dope though because again it goes into the concept of mentorship. Not even back, but it goes into the concept of mentorship. I know every time that I've played in a game here in the States, and it talks about somebody that's coming from overseas or in any kind of way, shape, or form that has an accent of almost any shape or form, you almost make the assumption, of course, one, that they know all the ins and outs about rugby more so than you do by significant amounts. And then secondly, that there isn't much that can be added here from the States. But even for you to be able to say that there was you had someone who helped guide the pathway, and it wasn't just kind of figuring it out of nowhere, utilizing those networks. Outside of the coaching, did it end up finding itself to be useful in terms of your continuing the pathway?
Yeah, it did. It got me thinking, and then it was I never stopped thinking, and I never stopped questioning, and that was kind of it was a very good learning year for me. And then I realized that coaching it's an art to it, and if I really do like it, then I have to actually start committing to it. But again, it was always in the back of my mind. I was just playing at that stage, and then giving input or feedback here and there. It hadn't taken over my life, which it kind of did a couple of years later.
It was building its seeds. We're getting ready to plant to sprout.
Yeah.
I always wonder if a lot of the issue that comes with that hesitancy, and I think now we're maybe starting to see the industry of rugby actually develop versus just the activity of rugby developing. But I always wonder if a lot was lost in that because of the unstable nature, and which still exists, but the unstable nature of being able to, I guess, be financially viable within it, or even just the opportunities to be able to have that kind of creation.
Yeah, so I mean, if we look at like the top club games, let's just look at the Aviva Premiership, or I mean, they're struggling to make it a financially viable product.
Right.
So if they're struggling, like something has to be off about it.
Right.
You know, the Pro 14, like the Leinster and stuff, they may only get 2,000 people out to a game. And that's, you're watching Irish internationals play. Like they could put that Leinster team here in America, and because of the scarcity of it, I'm sure you'd get a lot more than 2,000 people.
Right.
So if the teams at the top level are struggling, and they all have to be bailed out or backed by billionaires, then how do we at the club game or at the local level, how do we make it financially viable, you know?
No, that's real. And man, whenever you talk about a situation like that has, and we've talked about it before, but when we talk about a situation that happens with rugby at that level, I always have to go back to what the history comes into with the sport itself as to why it always seems so difficult for it to find its value in the commercial area, to both, not just to its crowd, but even in and of itself, and trying to do that. So like and maybe that's that might have been what feels like there's been some active change, and it probably is what also impacts within the coaching element. But you have to ask, you know, how much the culture of amateurism has still holds it back, almost like its own personal neck holding chain for the sport world round. Because like you said, how is it possible that premiership rugby or Pro 14 rugby, and now we're even seeing with Super Rugby, have all these struggles despite it having a massive head start, well, a little head start, a 20-something year head start, but at least the culture of the game was already there, and the culture of ticket purchasing was already there. So why is it that it comes into this element where these teams aren't able to hold themselves outside of being an ego boost for wealthy owners, highly wealthy owners?
Well, even if we take the owners or the ownership out of it, like it's a game that has its roots in upper middle class and blazer wearers, and making it financially viable and making money in rugby was never an issue for them. It was all it's a societal thing, it's a social status. So for the longest year, I mean, you look at rugby league, who broke away. Rugby league seems to be able to. Rugby league's only really played in England and Australia, but in those two places, it seemed to be financially viable. I know the salaries to the players are quite high. Even Sonny Bill was going to Toronto and he was getting paid. He was going to be the highest paid player around.
Right.
Because rugby league when it went professional all those years ago, it had to be about making money. Rugby union didn't.
Right.
It was a status thing. And like, as I said, you know, look at the Irish. Like I went to a rugby playing school. It was a status thing as well, for sure. There's very few players coming out of, well, back in the day, there's very few players coming out of disenfranchised areas, because the entry barriers are more difficult. You know, the cost is kind of prohibitive. It's not like soccer. You can't go play by yourself.
Right. Yeah, you kind of need to have at least somebody, unless you're just wanting to kick all day and all out.
Yeah.
You need you need at least one other person.
Yeah. So.
You know, and it comes back to what we see here, even with this advent of MLR. And kind of want to obviously continuing down with your path, but like it always makes me go back and go like, all right, one thing that can always be appreciated from the NFL is that it always knew how to pivot. Like, regardless of whatever you feel about it or however people feel about it, you always knew that there was going to be an ability to pivot and either absorb something that they didn't have or to adjust to society so that they can be able to continue to survive. So whenever it comes to rugby, even now, I think we always find this element, even at the club level, where we see a cycle of the same habits that have been going on for maybe 30, 40, 50 years, but they no longer work. But because this is all that's known and it never really pivoted very well, you kind of find yourself having to see, hey, am I able to, or what are we able to do differently? Like, because clearly the current pathway is not working anymore.
It's disruptive innovation, and I think that especially in sports, like let's take the Jason Garrett Cowboys for example.
Right.
You know, every year the Cowboys, it was always like, well, we just need to do this little bit better. Our linebackers need to be a little bit better. You know, our defensive backs, if we can just get a little bit better here and there. They're never really like starting at, okay, so we want to be Super Bowl champions. What do we have to do to be there? It's all, let's just improve on what we have. And it's like, so I know at the TRU, there's a new schedule or like divisional organization out, which is just tweaking the ones from the previous years. And I mean, I'm quite disappointed with it. I feel that, I mean, you mentioned the bankruptcy at the start of the show. The USA has gone bankrupt. The COVID has happened. There's a huge opportunity to go out and let's explore some different ideas and let's create something that perhaps might work.
Right.
Like, you know, you need to stress test these kind of like league structures and the organizations, and until it's stress tested, we don't know if it's actually going to work. I mean, we're just going to be making minor tweaks here and there, and I find that the core tenet has to be about more people playing rugby, especially here in the US. It's not about like it's not about finding All Blacks. It's about more people playing rugby, and we need to develop league structures and have a focus on how do we get more people playing rugby. You know, how do we get a wider or a broader spectrum in the socioeconomic classes as well playing rugby?
Right.
You know, it can't all just be a couple of schools here and there, and then your foreigners come over, because that's
Right.
it's not sustainable, and it's not financially viable as well, because the parents of the foreigners that are coming over, they're not buying tickets.
Right. Well, look, here's the other kicker. It's even just to be able to sell the tickets.
Yeah.
You know, it's just even commercializing within your element that makes it that even if you're saying, you know, even trying to bring them in, so your parents aren't paying the tickets, you don't have anybody taking anything in, and so it kind of keeps getting run in through this alumni base that is not necessarily even always viable or even there for most of the teams that are here. But yeah, like it's interesting also because of the fact that you have these examples that already exist in the sporting realm to show it. And I always wondered, like, in all the elements of wanting to be a copycat in anything, like this would be the opportunity to perfectly emulate, finding a way to copycat the best of what other industries have with the culture that you've already established. But I always wonder, like, maybe does that end up clashing against itself?
Yeah, it's original ideas are scary. And
understatement.
And fear sells, unfortunately. I will say, like, I saw, it's a program that I feel bad. I probably should have tried to introduce it myself, but talking about Colombia, so the Medellin, the regional side there, so that had the majority of the national side players in Colombia, and they're all based there, and the training facilities were based there, and they have incredible sports facilities there because Pablo Escobar built them all. You know?
Right.
Turns out he had some spare cash.
I wonder where, just
yeah, and
that man struggled. He struggled.
And he was a philanthropist. But you make the Medellin All-Star side. You have to commit to, I think it was one set. Everyone on the team, the squad, had to commit to one session a month in the favelas, basically in the poorer areas, and they had to go in and they had to coach rugby, and they're being coached rugby by locals.
Right.
So it was almost like a success story where they're like, hey, there is a different opportunity. And I do remember then saying a couple of years ago, World Rugby did a piece on, I think he's not the curly haired captain, but the captain that replaced the big tall curly haired guy. I forget his name. I'm sorry. But he came out of one of these programs years ago, and it was like it's the numbers are growing, and you have to actually be in the communities. You have to be, I wrote an article for I don't know who I wrote it for many years ago, but I talked about how teams have to win to be successful, whereas a club doesn't. A club doesn't have to win to be successful. A club is about membership. It's about providing services and being in the community, being successful in the community. Having your facilities and stuff like that. Whereas if you are just a team that shows up in a park twice a week, and if you don't win due to the
Nobody will come back.
they won't come back. They'll go to another team, especially here in Dallas, where there's on any one year anywhere from like 14 to 19 different clubs all scattered around the metroplex. It's quite easy just to bounce from one to the other, to do a year or two here or there, and maybe you have a falling out, or you think some guys you just don't like them, so you go leave and you join the rival. And that's the thing. They talk about the number of rugby clubs here in the US when they put out their statistics every year, but I would love to do some research and go over them and say, and categorize them. Now, that's a team, that's a club.
Right.
How many true clubs actually exist here versus how many teams?
Do you how much of that do you take into the consideration as you've started implementing your own coaching style and finding your own philosophy?
Well, I had a natural advantage with my coaching, I guess. So I started coaching dark here in Dallas, and there was an unbridled passion for the guys, because the reason I came back to America was because of that, an opportunity that was provided to me by them.
Yeah.
And they became almost like my family. So there was just an intense desire to give back, to help them. And that kind of gave me some leeway for some of my crazier ideas.
It's like, thank you guys for letting me have this Pandora's box, and I'm gonna open it.
Yeah, pretty much, So that was kind of it gave me I had some, just I guess, credibility built in.
Yeah.
Just the amount of work that I was putting in, and things that we were doing which other clubs weren't. And it kind of resonated with a big group of the guys, and yeah, it was very it was a nice experience. It was very, very, very enjoyable.
Oh, nice. But obviously Dark wasn't the last place that you coached in. You'd been able to kind of maneuver around a little bit.
Yeah.
In doing that, like, were you, I mean, maybe not the last place, but it wasn't the only place. But what were some of the experiences that you were starting to take in that kind of just kept feeding that creativity and really returning back to the artistry of what coaching is for you?
So I was in Germany coaching at a professional level there with the club, and we're doing 3 nights a week on the pitch. And I wanted to get an extra session in with the guys, but I couldn't. Their partners weren't happy about it. So I started a touch rugby, touch rugby on Wednesday. So the official FIT touch rugby, yeah. So that was Wednesday evenings, and that was co-ed. And the idea behind that was to get them and their partners to come out and maybe have some fun together. And then it got very competitive very quickly.
It got very real.
Yeah, but it was community-based things. I remember seeing it was down in Austin. It was Justin Hale and Aaron Bone. I think they did a thing called the Shortcast, where it was a TV a video log.
Of course, I remember that. I remember whenever they tagged us. I think on me and Tozan on the first one or something like that. There was something that they were calling us out on. It was good stuff.
But I took that and I saw it, and so I took that to Germany, and I asked a couple of guys. They weren't keen, and then these 2 young guys, they said, "Oh, this would be a great idea. We'll do it." And it's stopped recently because of COVID, but that was running weekly for almost 2 years, and it was just a great way. And they took it and ran with it. They'd have the club presidents on, they'd have sponsors on. They were just making jokes, and it was all the new players were on. It was just a wonderful little thing which helped boost the club made us a club, not just a
Right.
team, and it kind of added like our personality to it. So just things like that where you see an idea and you're like, oh, that could work, and let's try it over here. Trying to think. So also the other thing, I mean, especially here in America, rugby, it takes quite a toll on us, on our bodies, and both our time. So when I was with Dark and we were pushing towards nationals and stuff like that, I had a big focus on creating like a wives and girlfriends type club or circle. So we'd have a lot of events for that, and then that got me being able to have the guys out practicing Sunday morning after playing Saturday.
Oh, nice, because they were already being able to be there with their families.
Yeah.
So it became more. It was almost like replacement brunch situation.
Yeah, just with me chasing them around with a stick for an hour and a half.
So you tap back into your country to the farm side.
But that's the thing, like when you get the partners and spouses involved, and they feel a part of the actual club, then your club growth will be exponentially higher than if it is just a bunch of guys. And I firmly believe that, it's a big thing to try and push.
Because the concept is always comes back to community. Like, and that's why it's very interesting that you say that, because it's always been one of the arguments that have come up that with the rise of MLR, what is the purpose of the rugby clubs as we knew it now? And we always talked about the fact that and you said it great, like it's the difference between a club and a team. Like a lot of the clubs now work mostly as teams, but they lost maybe not lost, but it's kind of been diminished or maybe taken for granted what it was to be a club. And a lot of people just go like, oh, you need to have, because we didn't have a rugby pub for ourselves, simply we weren't able to create that community. But it's also in the fact that they're not creating a community. So you're not creating necessarily the event or the opportunity to intercede these families, intercede these outside affects into it, so that it becomes part of that, that society. It's, you're creating a new society, and that's whenever the kids start to get filled into that sphere, and whether people move in or move out, there's something that is consistent within it, as opposed to this cookie cutter method of, resonating that. That's a really good point in placating that, because it's so obvious, but it's so difficult for people to execute because it requires a thought. It
requires buy-in.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. Like we seem to be becoming more insular as a society. Like it's all about fear, as I said, and to be able to to commit, to put yourself out there and say, hey, you know what, this actually might be, these people don't want anything from me. They're not like hitting me up to be you have to be a social member. You have to pay your social member dues. No, right. I don't care. If we're having a barbecue, come hang out at the barbecue. I'm not going to charge you. Like I saw one club I do remember I was involved with, and they said, oh, players are free, and then if anyone else has to pay X amount to be at the barbecue. And I was like, what if they bring their wife or their girlfriend? Do you think she's ever going to come back when she picks up a plate and you hand her a bill?
Right. It's like, what are you doing to actually attract the people to come in the back, overall, this feeling.
Yeah. So that's that kind of like the social fun aspect, and you actually make it more about a family and make it about community, which you've mentioned several times. And I think that's, we're so focused on results and we're so focused on who's going to playoffs that we're missing out.
I think that's real. That's real. And I wonder if, because, this is where it goes back to what we were talking about before on what was is it possible to be able to intersect the traditional method of creating the club without it being force-fed that it has to maintain amateurism, while also simultaneously bringing in the new wave of being able to create self-sustenance and to be able to create that, finding that balance between the two. I do wonder if, I feel like people are so afraid that actually, you know what? I don't even think. I know for a fact that people become so afraid that they're losing the club community atmosphere that they refuse to add the commercial component. But in not even adding that component, they also are simultaneously losing the community affair because you can't bring in new people and you're not doing things to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's I only kind of had this realization a couple of months ago. I think probably the biggest struggle for us financially is, when they talk about community and sustainability, everyone says, oh, we need a youth program, we need kids, we need it filtering through. But if we actually look on the other end of the spectrum, I do believe every club should have an old boys team.
Right.
And the reason this came to me is like one guy, he's 24, 25. I said, oh, are you going to be playing this year? He's like, oh, I don't know. I might focus on life. I'm not sure I want to be in the same position as some of the guys who are 29 or 30 type thing. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, I don't know if I want to play. But if every club had an old boys team, well, then you're getting members who are further along in their pay scale than an 8-year-old child.
Right.
And then you have your community. Then they're telling the stories, and all of the great clubs have great stories.
Right.
So that's what I think we need to be doing, and I've been trying to push it a little bit. Like, for instance, and here's some free advertising for them, but there's the Golden Oldies tournament is going to be in Denver in May 2021. So we're going to put an old boys team into that. And it's like, I'm looking forward to it because I'll have aged out. I'll be 35, but I'll be playing with my friends.
Right.
And there's going to be like, friends from all over. And it's almost like a reunion, or like not quite a college alumni game, but it's an idea to reminisce and to talk about the good times and the bad times. And I think we need to, as clubs, start focusing on the older player, because rugby is getting more and more difficult. So if we can have some kind of something for the older players, well, then they're going to stick around.
No, I think that was something I even remember whenever I was with Baton Rouge. I always wanted to, like, as I got into it a little bit more, maybe like 3-4 years in, I started kind of wondering. I was like, yo, what's the history on this club? Like, it was, even discovering it was something that I never even knew before, but it was like, yo, what's the history? Like, who are the guys that made the difference, or who are some of these? Because your history, you're not held to your history, but your history dictates also the path of where you've been, and it lets you know what you're also being a part of. And we know that whenever you start to see those roots, it gives you a foundation of what a culture is for you to be able to work off of. And so even anybody that comes in, it's like, look, this is what we were, or this is what we are, and this is why we are this way. And so if you do decide to make any changes, you at least know what the change is coming from versus this open arena. So to be able to have that old boys concept, that old boys club, and I think even more, take it even one step further, is making sure you're intertwining it well with the women as well too, because now, especially now, I feel like, I know for our age, but I don't know so much for younger, a little bit, but I know it got weird to me after a little bit with it just being just all guys all the time. Because sometimes it's like, I don't like, you guys are cool, but yo, like, I want to talk to somebody else within it. But having that sister club and making sure that they are actually intertwined with the club and not just being two separate teams under the same name, like, you now have that advantage of, if you have your old boys or old girls, but when it comes down to something moving for either team, you have both sides able to be able to impact the game the way it needs to.
Yeah,
or impact your team or contribute or something.
You're more well-rounded. I mean, like, you're not a square, you're more of a circle, and you
right
roll further.
Literally the full circle.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It is a 360-degree. We have to take that kind of an outlook on it. It's not just about, making our men's team better, or we should be providing opportunities for universities, and not just about trying to get their players to play for you.
Right. Because that's what makes people feel like they're just objects on the team. And so they lose that connection. I know we had this discussion all summer when it came with black players and feeling like, oh, we're just an item tool to be able to help you win, but there's not necessarily a connection. That was kept coming up in conversation constantly. And we see that the same, like you said, with college students. Like there's always we need to raise them up so that they can come play for us when they're done with school. But you even see the I guess the issue with it with MLRs. If the best players decide to try and go play pro or play with a high level club or a high level team of some sort, whether to travel or play professionally overseas in whatever way you can, it just defeats the purpose of what you were hoping the club was going to get filled in. So it's like, what are they coming back to if they don't need it, if you're not even playing at a level that they want to play at?
Yeah, and that was like, I remember I had some pinch me kind of moments when I was coaching in New Zealand. There were games when the Super Rugby teams would be on a bye week, and there's Dominic Bird. He went to Lincoln University as well, but he's playing in France now.
Nice.
He was with the Chiefs at the time, and he flew home on his week off to play club rugby.
Nice.
Yeah,
he was that dedicated.
Yeah, we played games when, like, Israel Dag or Kieran Reid was on the opposition, or Mackenzie was playing. Because they grew up in the club.
Right.
They see the history. Their all black jersey is on the wall. The photos and the trophies and the mementos throughout the 100 years of the club are there. So there's a sense of tradition, and there's a sense of just adding to that tradition. And this is what you do when you're off. You go help your club. There's no like, oh, well, I'd like to go to the beach this week or something. It's like, no, that's it, dude. You got to help your club. And it was just a surreal experience to have these like top level players going, hey, I want to play this week. Is that okay? It's like, yeah.
It's like, I think we can make room for you. I think we can find a place.
yeah, it's okay,
No, and I think that part makes sure that you do stave off the possibility of its own extinction, because I know, like I said, for me, I started wondering if club teams, in like adult club teams, even made sense anymore. Because American football, you might have, obviously, it's high school is where everybody plays at, college is where the best of high school, and pros is the best of college. But if you didn't get through any of those levels, you're basically done playing outside of maybe flag football here and there. But you're not gonna, the ones that are like connected teams, they exist, but you don't put a lot of weight on them.
Mm-hmm.
And the semi-pro ones, you just feel like it's guys trying to look for their opportunity to get some way into some level of stable pro system.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of figured like that was the way that it was going to end up being with adult clubs, because it's like, why? Your whole purpose was playing the highest available version of rugby.
Yes, and I will counter that by saying there is a place for it, because if you look at Japan and they have their old rugby there where the different colored shorts, there's men 75 years old still playing rugby.
Played against them. It's true.
That's there's no, I can't think of many sports that are like that, and the camaraderie, and that's why it's a special sport and has a special place in society, I feel. But again, we have to provide those roots for the tree to grow.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
I want to ask, how many places have you coached? Because you mentioned 3-4 places very casually, like they were nothing, and I just realized, like,
well, yeah, I am your typical Irish gypsy, just without a caravan and a Brad Pitt snatch accent.
No random fighting.
No. So I've been very lucky. Through my work in Dallas, I got to be involved with the Texas Regional Select side and the Northern side selects, and then I went to Development Summit and got talking to someone, and I got involved with the Women's National side for performance analysis, and then that kind of like kickstarted things for me. So I moved to New Zealand, which was an incredible experience. And then from that, I got to move back to Europe, and so I coached in both Portugal and in Germany, before returning just before COVID hit to the US.
Wow.
So I've been gone for like five years, I guess. Yeah, 2015 I left.
Man, I didn't realize. Yeah, huh? Because I remember whenever we were supposed to meet up in New Orleans, and that would have just been a visiting trip, right? Or
Yeah. So I was flying in for like 3 weeks, and then I was gonna go. It was right after Mardi Gras, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. So no, that makes sense. So like, and being able to go through all these places, you've been able to see these elements play into what makes the sport so special, but into what, like I said, has added to your philosophy and how you go about coaching now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and I've learned so much from many different places. I even think you can learn from a bad coach, because you can learn how not to do things.
I feel like there's a valuable lesson right there. You might.
And it's always been, I'm kind of like throw myself into each role, obsessively so, and you do tend to get burned out. So that's why I would travel a lot, where I'd be like, hey, and just take a weekend here or a week there type thing, and then limit myself to only like 2 or 3 hours of rugby thinking a day. So then you'd meet a lot of people, and then that's kind of opportunities open up, and then your contacts here and then contacts there, and then that's just allows me to be myself, I guess.
Oh, look, that's the best way, and that's the authentic way, and that's where you want to always be able to pull out, because even if you can't be authentic to yourself, you can't be authentic to your players, and if you can't be authentic to your players, how do you expect them to trust you? It plays in. So now you're working with TRU a little bit, right?
Yes, yeah. So it's been I guess with the COVID, there was no games happening. They started looking around to do virtual education sessions, through with Kirk Tates, the president, and then Wendy. And then Wendy got in touch with me, and she said from analysis, they wanted something about analysis. Don't think she was quite expecting the full depth of the 6-part special,
They didn't know what you had, G. They didn't know
yeah, so it's that, and I put a proposal together. We talked through some ideas, and I just everyone built on the next one,
So what's expected? What's expected from the classes themselves? Like what are you planning to present for them?
So
people should be definitely a part of it.
So the analysis ones were, I took a topic of the week, albeit the technology. How do you video your games? What about videoing practice? What you can do, pre and post edit, how to clip and stuff. And I broke it down into almost like 3 tiers. So if you have a limited budget or a high budget, this is what you can aim for. Or if you're working on a shoestring budget, this is what's available to you. I did episodes on statistical analysis, how you can look at the game and how we judge statistics. So for instance, like if let's say you and I are playing a game and you make 10 out of 10 tackles, but each one results in a loss of 3 meters, and I miss 4 and I make 6 tackles, but we gain 5 turnovers, then what's better? And it all depends on how you tailor the statistics to how you want to play, or what your principles of play are. And then I kind of tied it all together with, I don't think enough technology is incorporated into practices here in the US from what I've seen.
Yeah. Look, we just started getting people used to filming their games, and that was like 3 years ago. So,
and even then, like there's simple things like I call it the 2-pass rule on filming your games. Like I've seen a lot of games where they're zoomed completely out or they're zoomed completely in. Yeah, and when you work in a media, you would know that there's a happy medium in between.
Yes. You can see everything and also be specific to a place at the same time. It's okay. You won't miss a play.
No, so like when someone's kicking a goal, we don't need to see what the winger's doing back on the halfway line. You know? But yeah, so the technology in practice and how best to incorporate it from things like, you know, from video cameras to your iPads to phones and stuff like that. And then so I finished up with a live Q&A. So I think that one went out a couple of weeks ago. And then the next series I'm doing, I just started this week actually, is on planning and how your coaching, like your vision and your philosophy impacts, you know, the seasonal planning and, you know, looking at players and positional roles and just kind of everything that you kind of need in order to prep for the upcoming season. And I asked a lot of people about it, and at varying, like, you know, there are different coaching levels from the level 300s down, and what kind of, you know, what would you like to have known, you know, what's missing, you know, what's not taught and what don't you know. And it was, unfortunately, there was a lot of like similarities in the answers. And you know, I made a joke. I was on another podcast a while ago, and I made a joke, and the equivalent is like you're at a steakhouse and you order a steak, and then your waiter disappears. And then you're waiting 10 minutes, and then another waiter's there, and you're like, "Hey, where's my steak?" And you're like, "Oh, well, your waiter's out having the smoke out back, so we're going to have to wait on him."
Wait.
It's like that's not going to happen. You know, we as a membership need to be more demanding of, you know, educational and training. We need more education and training. It's and this is the thing. Like, I'm not talking about bringing outsiders in. There's so many knowledgeable people here in the U.S. and extremely successful people in the U.S. And there's also a load of original ideas. We can't develop an American way of playing rugby or even an American rugby culture until we incorporate Americans into the training and development.
Right.
And that's what's missing. Like,
no,
if I was to, you know, we were to watch a game of rugby together and everyone had the same colored jerseys on, would you be able to identify the American way, you know, compared to the New Zealand way or the South African way or the Japanese way or even the Argentinians? You know, they all have their own like styles, and I think America has such a wealth of athletes, high performance mindset athletes in particular, that we need to start utilizing what makes America great. You know, what is the best parts, and how do we apply that, and how do we develop it? And it's something I think is missing right now, unfortunately.
No, I agree, and you know, I gotta say, even, you know, because I gotta give it to the people. You know, I got added on to with a bunch of other people onto the club, you know, training and development committee, and so it's great to be able to have another person to confirm that and to be able to tell. And you know, it's on us to be able to go find those people, or for them to, or present at least a portal for people to find a way to provide that education. You know, I do think that at the same time, man, when it comes to rugby, and this is as a media guy, rugby people are not very forthright when it comes to presenting themselves in front of an audience solo. For as charismatic and highly characterized person, lot of high personalities that come within this sport, it's an incredibly shy group of people when it comes to like focusing in. So finding those people and getting them to come out to actually educate and bring that knowledge forward is in it. So
are they shy, or are they protective of their ideas?
I'm gonna say, honestly, I'm gonna say more shy than I don't get me wrong. I think protective definitely up to a point, but I think that I think this is where the interesting dichotomy comes. It is protective until they get recognition for it, and then they push it. But when you're asked to put your face to that recognition, it becomes shy.
Okay,
it's almost like the stage fright comes in, but the appreciation is taken. If kind of a great analogy would be this, is if somebody calls their name and everybody on the stage claps, it's loved. But if they say come out onto the stage, now it's held back.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you use their information without being said, obviously it becomes angered. So it's this weird complex of trying to find people to just go ahead and give it. Go ahead and provide it, and then be able to put your face to it. And you have to get used to people. So it's almost like there's another set of media training that has to be done for rugby people in general, just because as natural as it can be for some, it's not really as natural, oddly enough.
That's at all levels. When I worked at the Crusaders, the Crusaders and the Academy guys, they had media training. We had the fake media room set up, and they were peppered with questions.
Yeah.
I did that so when I worked in Portugal, I worked at the top club there, and I created a thing called the Admirals Club, which was more about like it wasn't about rugby. It was about leadership and just, we did a lot of communication. But I had media sessions where we had like a series of books, and then the guys, and they would range from the senior team down to the under 16s and 18s. They had to like stand up in front of the group of 5 or 6 and give like a 2-minute presentation about the book, and then we peppered them with questions, because the players that were in these groups, they were the ones that were going to go on to be representing Portugal at the national level. One of them is now the captain of the Portuguese national side.
So dope.
So just being able to stand up and to back your ideas is such it's an important aspect of life, I find.
No, and I think it's one of those skills that people feel like it's a talent and not a skill. And so if they don't feel inherently natural to it, then it must not be for them, which is ironic in this era where if there is a point where you need to be able to be ready to, find how to be your authentic self while also not feeling like a fool in front of the audience, this is the era that you needed. That media training becomes so necessary because everything's going to be everything's video, everything's picture, everybody is their own mini media company, whether they use it for that or not.
Sorry, can you hear the dogs barking?
I can, but no worries. It's no worries.
I'll be back in a second. Hang on. Oh, sorry. That commercial break is.
Look, they wanted to get in on the action. They were like, "Look, we got things to say too."
That break is sponsored by the Rugby Outlet Mall. There we go. Part 2. I shouldn't have to do your job.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does become this interesting concept of being able to know how to do it. And, it's not to say that everybody is going to end up being in front of the camera or whatever, but those that have that knowledge, have that skill, going back to like we talked about with old boys, if you have the experience, you should feel willing to want to present it. And even if you feel like it's so protected, we have to also know, like, this in this day and age, there's no such thing as protected information. There's only execution that changes now.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's like, especially if you think about it from a tactical sense or a strategic point of view, the first time you do it, it's videoed. It's on TV. It's no longer a secret. They have it. And the rest of it is just what you do with it. We know this. So that's why that's why I said it's a mixture of all of it: protection, shyness, and maybe not knowing. Yeah.
But I'm hoping that as time continues, that we're able to kind of see that diminish down. And we can work to be able to bring people and feel. And here's the other thing I've learned is that people don't and I think this one is just a human nature, and it's not even a testament of time or era, is that people are not don't naturally volunteer themselves, but they won't reject often being asked. People need to feel like there's somebody going to them versus them coming to the situation. I think that's just a natural element of humanity, essentially thinking somebody else is going to take care of it.
for sure.
Yeah. So, but Gordon, man, I want. Can you let us know where they can find you, brother?
Yes. So I am on Twitter at Flash Gordon. It's 4 A's and an underscore.
Let's go.
You can get me there, and then I will be again. If there's coaching things, I have another series of the development and planning sessions. They're going to be on the Texas Rugby Union website, and their socials, their Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. And the one I'm actually really excited about is, I probably should say that, on the end of the month, so Monday 2 weeks from now, I'm hosting a coaches roundtable discussion. So we have some incredible coaches, so like Paul Emmerich, who's involved with the Houston SaberCats, to Holly Eicher, and then there's going to be 4 coaches. I'm going to moderate, and they're going to talk about just an aspect of coaching and of play. It's going to be about the transitions and during COVID, like how do we coach transitional play with the COVID precautions in. So that's the first of its kind. I'm really excited about it. It will probably be 45 minutes to an hour, and hopefully it's the start of something special because, like you talked about these people being shy, when we put them in a group setting and it is just 4 coaches having a discussion about ideally an interesting topic, well, then I think there'll be a lot of great ideas out there. And I think not just the membership of the Texas Rugby Union or the Red River Conference, but all of the US, and then hopefully more on a global scale. We might be able to make an impact, maybe 1 or 2 places. Maybe a friend from Colombia might watch it, or someone in Portugal or Germany. And I think that's the way forward when we actually start having these in-depth conversations and getting them down recorded. The game will grow exponentially, I think, when we actually start sharing ideas and discussing them openly.
Agreed. And that's going to be October 26th, right?
Sorry, the 26th. Yes, it's Monday at 6 p.m.
That's what I was trying to look up, because I was like, 2 weeks from now. Let me make sure I actually know what date that is.
Yeah, at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. And they'll all be on the Texas Rugby Union website, their socials and stuff.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. Bro, I really do appreciate you coming through, man. Like this was good. You do realize I'm gonna have to have you come through again, right?
That's fine. We have the whole Marvel universe to talk about.
I'm telling you, right?
Yeah, other things, yeah.
I'm ready. All right, brother.
Okay.
Gordon, man, thank you so much for coming through. Great convo. Oh, we're gonna have him back again, guys. Even though this is season 2, we got a slew of episodes in season 1 that you guys should definitely check out. From Jorge Coda, from Rugby and Beauty, based in Brazil, Naya Tapper. We got Kyle and Tiana Granby of Roots Rugby. We got Blaine Scully, former captain for USA Rugby. Phil Thiel. We got James Brunson, the director for the North Philly Nomads, who also have a movie called The Nomads. Adam Hayward Gray, the lead star, the superstar from the movie Play On, and so much more. Chetta Emba, Angie Elena, Charity Williams, just a load of great conversations come through and just enjoyed the hell out of. You're gonna love it. Check it out. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you for everything you've done. And please remember that you are loved, you are blessed, and you are highly favored. You guys have a good one. Cheers.